Welcome back to Real Repairs for Real Customers. It's been tough getting some videos out this year because I'm working on another big project. Let me take just a moment to show you what we're up to. So I've got a new CD being compiled. I've got 11 songs done to date, up to the point of mixing. Let me show you what I've been doing with them. I've been adding all of the parts to each of the tunes, recording the guitar, of course, but we have the bass and the drums. And then I have on this one, for example, 4 different keyboards. I've got 3 different saxes, tenor, alto, and a soprano sax. And by the time you get to working and editing and arranging all of these parts, you've got quite a mess. After that, I'm having to stop and do some housekeeping, and I can spend, believe it or not, 2 or 3 hours just housekeeping. So you have all of the instruments here on the mixer. You've got them assigned to group channels. Now you can just deal with the number of group channels. We've been getting these 11 songs up to the point of the parts written, the arrangements made, the housekeeping done, a rough mix done. Now we can rest with these 11 tunes and just concentrate on a nice clean mixer and pay attention to the mix only. And so it'll be very comfortable doing our final mix when this is done. We have 2 more tunes that we're currently writing at the current time, and so we hope to add those, maybe even another tune if we can get that on the CD yet. So that's what we've been up to. So, we did want to take time out from this, though, and get out another video, and this one is to do with texturing. We had such a good response from the colleagues in the industry on texturing that I thought it would be good to discuss this particular texture. And it follows a technique used by famous painters. So, let's jump right into that. So I've got the base repair done already before thinking that you might like to see the texture step. So let me catch you up to speed on what we've done. This piece of ABS was broken in 2, and I determined it was best to repair it in situ. I have elected in this instance to use a gel glue instead of ABS rod. I kept the 2 pieces aligned with a straight edge and then accelerated the glue and then filled the voids. It is quite necessary to use 100 grit sandpaper to get this contour right. Otherwise, you will texture and color the repair and then discover the contour is not right. And then you're left with having to take everything back down with 100 grit anyway. If you feel apprehensive about digging it with 100 grit paper, then it's perhaps that you lack the confidence to refinish over top of that. In that regard, this video should be of some help to you. In the word impasto, you see the word paste, and we are going to use a gel superglue here. It is this texture that gives a otherwise 2-dimensional painting a 3rd dimension. My ultimate goal here is to create lines of texture which will then be blended with a spray texture or a random texture. We'll get the combination of the 2 in order to hide this repair and to blend it. So I have feathered the initial application, but I want it to be a little heavier. I have time, so I've grabbed some more material, and we're making some more distinct lines now. Use your own discretion as to where these lines should be. Your guess is probably better than mine. And so once you've come up with something interesting, here's a good time to stop and accelerate the glue. At this point, I'm sanding off the tops of the textures. I happen to have 400 here, but 220 could work. We'll still leave the lines there, but we want it to feel nice and smooth. Here's where I like to add a little bit of the color as a guide coat, and this will reveal the texture better and let me see my progress. These lines were still a bit too heavy, so I'm giving specific attention to those. I don't want to be too picky about this. We still want some randomness to the texture, but I don't want any lines standing out glaringly deep. We want them to be more subtle. So again, just a little bit of color to make sure that we're good. And then we're going to put our first rough spray grain while we have a tornado going by. This spray grain can be very, very big droplets because if you remember from our door panel video, we put large droplets on first. Even though they were tall and wide, we're going to take the height of them down with some 400 grit. So we'll get the benefit of the width of them. And we're not going to be too concerned about the height. The product that we're using involves the plastic primer, which of course is very strong, and it allows the texture to stand up tall and strong. And as you see in real time here, we spray the texture and then we dry it with the hair dryer, and then we can immediately get on it with 400 grit sandpaper to take the tops down. When we sand with the 400 grit, it's important to go in one direction only at first. That way we avoid digging in with the edge of our sandpaper. It's still somewhat tender. Even though it's strong enough to stand up to our sanding, it won't peel, it won't fall over, it'll stand up tall and strong. This is something that you cannot do with an organic solvent product. In fact, there are no products that are sold as textures that will perform this way. So our success is not about purchasing a prepackaged graining product as much as it is about a proper technique. As we mentioned in the door panel video with the texture, once you have a good product that stands up like this, it's all about the technique and spraying. So with the rough texture down, we can think about adjusting our texture as we spray it out on the cardboard to make sure what we've got. We can use a medium texture now to blend. Using the paint gun in this application is much different than any other conventional spraying that you will think about. For example, if you were spraying a fender on a car, you would adjust the flow of the gun and you would pull a full trigger. And the flow that you've selected and the full trigger will determine the speed at which you progress while you're painting. And when doing some painting overall, it's good to keep a distance of perhaps 18 inches away. But for spot repairing and spot texturing, we take a different approach. When I test my texture, I may be pulling just a hair trigger. And this is one instance where I'll be getting very close to the repair. So it is an unconventional use of the gun, but I think that you'll find that you have the ultimate control over your repair if you get really handy at this particular technique. So it looks like I've got it to my liking, and now I'm just doing an overall blending of the spray texture. So you've seen here that one big advantage of using the water-based product is that we can sand on our repair immediately. We can manipulate our repair as we go. This would be in contrast to using a solvent-based product, which we would have to allow sufficient time for outgassing. It would stay tender for quite some time, maybe even over the course of a day. We wouldn't be able to sand on it right away. And we might find that the next day the texture laid down, that is, it diminished. With water-based products, we eliminate all of those noxious fumes that we find when working with the solvent products. Okay, so this is my final touch-up here. Now it's time to adjust the gun for the final color step. So I'll be turning the pressure up a little bit to where we just get some good atomization. I am able to adjust the sheen on the fly. If I paint it a little heavier, it'll be a bit shinier. If I spray a finer mist and use the hairdryer immediately behind it, then I will get more of a matte finish. So I'm able to control the satin or matte finish on the fly while I'm spraying. When that's done, my alkali cleaner will clean up any overspray that's got past our masking tape. So with this overview, you see how nicely those lines of grain and the random spray texture blends with the rest of the dash. Well, before we wrap it up, I'd like to show you another example briefly. This was a polycarbonate panel out of, I believe, a Chrysler product. So I welded it together. I resurfaced it using 100 grit sandpaper. Then I got all Rembrandt over it with the Impasto texture. Long, deep lines this time. And a spray texture over top to blend. Well, that'll do it for this video. I hope you found this helpful. I know for me, whenever I get a chance to do this kind of texturing, it adds a lot more fun to my work. It certainly is fulfilling to look at a repair that rivals the original equipment. Thanks for watching. See you next time.